We're back.
We're back.
Gosh, we're just here in the first place. as far as anyone else is concerned,
We're back.
we just showed up. Let me tell you a story.
Okay, tell me a story.
A number of years ago, I was working on a project. We were doing a demolition on a single family home, 2 stories. Roof was coming off. I was working. You know how you have those moments where you notice something like this isn't quite right, but you're thinking
your
what
feeler.
to do about it.
Your
Yes, your feeler is going off in a big way and saying,
Red
"Whoa,
flag."
abort!" But there was bracing installed for this roof, temporary bracing to keep things from collapsing essentially while the roof was being demolished.
That's important.
I was standing, where there was half the roof off, half of it off, that was remaining.
Mm-hmm.
And I was seeing how this was going, and the bracing was bowing, and I'm thinking, this is a dangerous situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking how to get out of the spot where I was in. And I was on a 2nd story, and I'm thinking, well, I could jump out the window, but I could get hurt doing that. So I stood put where I was at. Mm-hmm. Next thing you know, this roof, the bracing collapsed, just like I saw it was happening. Collapsed, the roof collapsed.
As you're thinking through.
As I'm thinking through, I should be somewhere else, anywhere but here. The roof, and it ended up, the ridge is what caught me. Broke my hard hat, caught my arm on the way down. Thank God I was okay.
Yeah.
But the split-second decision, or really that split-second kind of moment of like being where I was at, in the position I was at, not really knowing how to get out of there without being in more danger. Mm-hmm. But it just started making me think about like how many things in life are that way where most accidents, and we're not just talking about safety today,
right?
But most accidents people are kind of aware of the fact that something stupid's being done. Mm-hmm. I heard somebody used to work for me. Her sister's husband had actually died in a trench because they didn't have any bracing, and it just collapsed in on him. He worked for the city here.
Sheesh.
And so stuff like that happens, and I'm sure people were looking at that situation at the time, say, well, we should have put bracing in or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You see it happening.
Yeah, hindsight.
And it really just points out the details, not just in safety, but as a part of construction that makes such a huge impact in the outcome. Mm. And sometimes they get neglected because we're there to get a job done. We're just muscling through it. We're trying to get something done and make money doing it. Yeah. So it needs to be fast, it needs to be efficient. But there's so many details that go into success that sometimes don't get valued enough. So today we're just going to be talking about why details really, really matter.
Yeah.
To the point of life and death type of situations like that. And
they're life and death, or they're operationally life and death.
Right?
Yes,
to your business. So health of your business.
They may not be, I mean, not every scenario is, thank God you had a hard hat on, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think people would leave if we were talking about safety for a whole podcast, but operationally.
Now stories like that, who knows? They might stick around.
Yeah, but I think like the whole life and death theme being operational or like reality life and death, I think is an important call out.
Yeah. My mom had got me when I was a teenager this plaque that she put on my wall in my bedroom, and it said, "Consider the unintended consequences if you're careless in your work." Mm. And it was a picture of a plane that had crashed in the ocean, like an illustration more or less, very sketchy, and you didn't really know what happened. Yeah, there was just somebody laying over the side of the plane in some state of injury. Yeah. And I'm trying to help this person. And it's like, plane went down.
How old were you when you got this?
I was probably like 13.
Teenager.
But it was one of those, you would look at that and you would say, well, I'm not sure what happened there. And so it was part of the appeal to it was that. So we end up having this, a lot of situations almost seem to sneak up on us in a way. And I think there's like 3 levels to this. One would be when you get to you arrive in a situation, say the tail end of a project, and it's like, how do we miss that? Mm. Almost being like it was completely blind to everybody involved. Where particularly if you own your own business or you're the one responsible for performing the work, and you end up having a situation, a detail got missed, and now you're just kind of surprised by it. Yeah. Somebody points out, "Hey, did we put that pipe in there?" Mm. Oh, shoot! Yeah, like that kind of moment.
Yeah,
right?
So you're pointing out like a type of person. Type of situation, right? Or like
there's probably kind of almost like a skill level involved as well. Like some people, because of their experience, because of their
failures, you see stuff more when you fail.
Noticing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think a better noticer, like somebody's going to might see that detail. So probably somebody that's in a position where they get surprised by things quite frequently. Tail into something. How did the detail get missed? Right.
Yep.
And then there's kind of and it's not necessarily a person, but it's more or less, it could.
Yeah, you might be a little more green. Yeah, in the situation.
Could happen more often than you'd want it to.
Yeah.
Then there could be another scenario where you get to a similar spot where something got missed, some detail got missed. And that could even be a safety thing. And you're almost being like, I noticed that, but I didn't do something about it. And so it was more or less a situation where you failed to act.
Yeah, like you're aware of all the detail or all the things that are kind of wrong or off, right? But
saw it.
Yeah, but you're paralyzed by it.
Yeah. Or it just, it's like, I remember doing walkthroughs in a rough-in and seeing something, where it's like, okay, yeah, we got to make sure that box gets moved because that's in the wrong position. But it didn't get noted. So it was something that was a pass through in my mind, or I mentioned it to somebody, but it didn't get detailed as a follow through, verify, make sure that it actually did get done. And so there's, sometimes it gets delegated to somebody else to be like, hey, go take care of that. Yeah, I'll just take care of it, boss. And it didn't. Yeah. So that kind of thing. Sometimes it wasn't thoroughly documented and make sure that the follow through was there. So there's that level of, it wasn't a surprise that it, that it needed to happen, but it was a surprise that it didn't get done.
Yep.
And then there's a situation where you could find yourself seeing all these details moving around you, completely overwhelmed by them, almost feeling like, some got acted on, some didn't get acted on. You're just overwhelmed by detail. Yeah. You see the detail. It's almost like very capable people find themselves in that position quite frequently because they're so acutely aware of all the circumstances around them that they're just overwhelmed by it. They don't know how to deal with it. So I think in either of these scenarios, we're just going to talk about really what to do about it.
Yeah.
And why it matters. The goal would be to see the details. Obviously, so obviously we're situationally aware. Yeah. We're thinking ahead, seeing the progression of things as they move along, then to be able to act on them in such a way where, that might be documenting something, that might be having conversations with things.
Yeah, it's proactive before you have an actual problem.
Yes, right? Bringing awareness to the issue. Yeah. And then there's another piece of this as well, is you could be that person that's so freaking annoying because you sing everything and telling everybody how to do their jobs. And,
like a know-it-all.
Yeah, right. Just, and we've all been around that person. You just shut up. Give me some space to work. And so you don't want to be that person. So there's an aspect of teamwork involved in all of this as well. It's like we're trying to win together. So there's humility and also giving other people space to kind of fail gracefully, but also be able to pick up the pieces, where almost taking a step back if you're working with team members and saying, hey, let's just do a quick walkthrough. Yeah. I do that with my team quite frequently. Take my foreman and say, hey, let's do a walkthrough. And I'm not going to lead that. I'm going to let him lead that. Yeah. And he's going to walk through, and I'm going to just take notes of different things I see, and I'm going to let him bring out the things that he wants to tell me about. And that way we're working together, and then we can go through it together. Hey, I had noticed. Yeah. And, you probably had a plan for that. Yeah. But, oh, yes, I want to make sure that's on the list.
But documented, yeah.
Yes. And that's a part of the checklist, part of the process of getting stuff done.
Well, it feels like a really encouraging way, too. So you're not just like, oh, you did a crappy job. You missed this and this and this and this and this. But it's like a path for excellence. Yeah. That's not like diminishing or, disqualifying the work that they actually did.
And you're helping them level up too. Those things you get your kids where they have all the hidden objects in a picture you're supposed to find,
Like I Spy.
Yeah, I Spy kind of. Yeah, right. Like, there's 14 birds in that photo. See if you can find them all. Sometimes it feels that way with your team. Yeah. Hey, there's 5 things wrong on this job. See if you can find them. But you're helping them level up. If there weren't the I Spy books, you wouldn't be good at
develop your
finding rubber ducks.
Yeah, I think that is something that it's like, I feel like a lot of people might, listen to this and be like, oh, well, that's just not who I am, versus like, I think us challenging that and saying like, it's actually a skill and a muscle that can be actually developed, right? Like training your eye to see things. And, I think one of the things I was thinking about is like, you're very attentive to detail. I'm a little less so. I'm attentive to detail, but not like to the same
there standard. Are levels.
Yeah, it's kind of like a scale. Where have I heard that before? But I think that is a piece to, if you surround yourself with people, like you become who you hang out with, right? It's kind of a similar vibe. But it's like if you surround yourself or, walk through a job site with someone who is a little bit more aware or attentive to those kinds of things, you'll actually learn from what they're pointing out. Point. And you'll be able to train your eye, I think, in seeing a lot of the details.
Yeah, a few times I've been around crews. Well, it's good enough for who it's for. I mean, like, we're not getting better. It's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's sort of barely
Good enough
passing.
for who it's for.
I mean,
That's funny.
it's kind of this dismissive nature of like, another framing carpenter. Well, it's between the lines, barely. I mean, it wasn't like we were trying to,
Sure.
And I'm constantly trying to push for a better
Quality.
quality
Yeah.
outcome. And be like, sometimes you get to the point of noticing detail and getting an eye for it.
Yeah.
Where it becomes second nature. You don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
You can walk through it and it just glares at you.
Yes.
I mean, so many times
Yeah.
where I remember a couple of my carpenters just like, turn that piece off. We don't want to hear it. You just see it. You just walk.
Yeah.
And it's not to your point, I think sometimes it can be dismissed as being like, well, I'm just not a details person.
Yeah.
No, you just haven't put yourself in a position where you study the details. You don't see them because you haven't been practicing.
Or if you haven't failed hard enough to actually like feel the pain
Start
of
appreciating
the consequence of.
Yeah, so maybe
missing them.
we start need to get into like why the details matter a bit. As we were talking about, obviously the safety aspect of it. My dad had told me a situation where a crew, and I don't remember the exact particulars, a number of years ago, but they had probably like an 8-story scaffolding on the side of a building, and the crew was up there, and one guy said, "Everybody hold still." And the scaffolding was fastened to the building with one nail, and it was just about pulled out. 8 stories up, braced off by nail. Like the scaffold is completely flying in the wind without this, any kind of movement.
Don't move.
And what had happened was the crew had put the scaffolding up the day before, said, well, we'll take care of nailing it off tomorrow. And it didn't happen.
They didn't do it.
That level of like details. And I think it speaks to 2 points. One is the observation of detail. Somebody said, yeah, we'll need to do that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't dealt with in the moment.
Yeah.
It really speaks to both of that. And I think just about any other detail is similar like that.
Yeah.
Of observation by somebody, but somebody else will take care of it or we'll do it later.
Yeah, don't
was
assume.
the result.
Yeah, don't assume someone else is doing it. Yeah.
There's also the cost aspect of a job, the efficiency aspect of it, if details get missed. I mean, it's a huge impact on cost of like, oh, we missed that.
Yep.
Specifications. Were we doing something?
Yeah, rework so expensive. We talk about that a lot.
So expensive. Coordination between trades. Well, my drywall guy can't get his job done because the blocking is not done by the framer. We didn't verify that. Or we're wasting his time putting in blocking because he doesn't have a framing nailer. He's screwing it in there or whatever. Things like that. Operational efficiency comes down to details.
Yeah, and there's a huge cost to losing efficiency on jobs.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's where it's all at.
Exactly. Yeah, we had a podcast episode on that a few weeks ago, I think.
Yes. People get stuck, can't move forward. Then the trust that you get or lose from either acting on details, noticing and dealing with them, or missing out on them. Someone's like, oh no, my contractor's constantly missing things.
For sure.
And then they feel like they have to kind of look out for themselves as a client and be like, if he can't manage all the details, it comes back to what we were talking about earlier with the not noticing details, noticing and not acting, or just being like, I've got 5 jobs going at the same time. I have no idea how to manage all the details. Any of those scenarios can result in a situation where stuff's getting dropped and hard.
No clear owner, those kinds of. Yeah.
I had just sort of a quick interjection here was back in the, we had done a move and there was a chessboard that was in my office. I like chess. And as we were moving, there was one pawn that was missing.
It's so frustrating.
So
it's like the last puzzle piece.
Yeah, exactly.
Except worse.
How do we play this game without a black pawn? And I'd make it a kind of a remark to if you see the pawn, like as you're cleaning, because it's got to be in that office and never move. Let me know.
Yeah.
And it was kind of one of those. Yeah, sure, we'll keep an eye on it. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, if somebody had actually found the pawn, of like the level of respect that I would capture from them, of like a casual remark of all the things to move, a pawn piece is not on the radar. But be able to capture that level of detail, the amount of respect you would have for that person, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, they're not going to miss stuff.
They're not going to miss stuff. Yeah. And that's a trained thing. Yeah. And I think people get that same level of trust for a contractor when it's like, man, that guy does not miss a thing. Every pawn piece is captured.
Which is a huge reputation builder.
Yes.
for the contractor too, like amongst the crew, amongst the team, amongst customers, right? Like I think reputationally, if you're like, because it allows you to actually fulfill a great job, right? And like actually get completion and fulfill a quality job.
Yes. Yeah. As part of a team, I think we've talked about kind of the annoying aspect of details when somebody is a more acute to details. And I think it's like any skill that somebody could have. There could be some pride attached to it. We talked about earlier, like you had mentioned, details might come more naturally from my experiences. Well, for me, that's just a product of life.
Right.
I got to that point because they mattered, and I prioritized that.
Yep.
And if you play volleyball way better than I ever will, it's just a matter of like your life experiences have, so it's not, instead of it being like somebody can lift more weight than somebody else, or somebody can, whatever skill they have, somebody can play the piano better than we should be leveraging those skills on a team to our advantage.
Absolutely.
Not to run each other down of like, how did you miss that, you stupid fool?
Yeah,
that stuff happens.
Yeah.
And it's happened on my projects even.
Yeah.
Where it's, but that's not teamwork. Now we're running somebody else down and making them feel like a heel because they didn't notice something else that somebody else with way more experience or training in that area had noticed. Yeah. Instead of leveling up as a team. So there's an aspect of humility involved with this, of giving people the benefit of the doubt, even giving them an opportunity just to see the detail themselves. And I think to be more specific, like what are we talking about as far as details? These are all operational things. These are sometimes it's related to selections or process or, how we actually get something done. Like this needs to be done before that, or specifications for how it should be done. So all of these like
scope of work,
yes, very very specific things as related to what's being done, how it's being done, when it's being done. Those kinds of things.
I think what you're calling out an example of somebody just like demeaning someone on a job site, right? I think if you have somebody who is highly detailed on your team, it could be you too that's treating your team that way, and you should stop doing that. But I think it's a training moment to like go to that team member who's maybe being demeaning in the way that they're like assessing the project or details, or maybe it's your project manager or super or whatever. I think it's a awesome coaching opportunity to be like, hey, I see this skill in you. Like, I love how you notice details. It's a skill that our team needs, but the way you deliver it needs trained. You know what I mean? So I think it's an opportunity to coach your team if you're seeing that on your job sites, because otherwise it's going to be like, they're not going to get looped into stuff because people don't like feeling like garbage, like they just got reamed for trying to do a good job. You know what I'm saying? So I think if you have that element going on your jobs, it's really important to call that out and train it. I know it's a little off tangent from what we're talking about, but you got to do that because otherwise that's going to cause like a cancer in your team.
And if you're that person that's constantly frustrated with the team and just why do the people work for me not see these things? Yeah. Well, it just points to it's a skill that needs to be developed in the team, like anything else.
And it's your job to train it.
There can be an aspect where people just don't care enough either, where it's just like, the kind of, it's good enough for who it's for, but that's because the caring's not there either. So there's an aspect of we need to care enough to care about the details to actually get better at that as well.
Or your team's not incentivized to care. That could be a piece of it as well.
I think there's one other aspect of this. Well, these details really apply to anybody in any position, whether you work for somebody else or whether you're running your own company, you're working for your client at that point. There's just levels to that. If you work for a contractor and he has his own clients, like at the end of the day, you serve that client. You're trying to get that project done through a builder. Yeah. I think there's an aspect of seeing details that you're not responsible for outside of your scope. If you're an electrical contractor and you see a plumber cutting through the outside, plate of a wall, and you're saying, boy, that is not right. He's hacking the thing up. Well, you see a detail. You see something that's going to be a problem later on, it's going to fail an inspection, or you see something that's being done wrong, the pipe's not sloped right. You're just that person that's saying, well, I wouldn't want that done in my house. Right. What do you do about that? Yeah. And I think there's an aspect of, well, who's responsible for it? Is that a general contractor? And you almost need to approach it with a level of like, this is not my business. You need to voice that of like, I don't know if you want me to even point this out, but I just had noticed that. And I just,
Wanted
you
you
could
to
tell
be
me to
aware.
shut up and not notice that kind of thing. Or you don't, and maybe you're not the right person to talk to about, but you're giving them agency to say, shut up and,
That's good.
and not be an annoying
Do your
person.
own job. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And where the contractor says, I'll do my own walkthroughs. You're my electrician, stick to your own business. He could tell you that, or he could say, thanks for letting me know. I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
It gives some agency into that. So you're not that person that's just pointing stuff out that's none of your concern.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because then you're like, how do we shut this guy up? And I've had a few situations where we've had contractors coming in behind another contractor. Mm-hmm. So as a part of the podcast or people that we serve, where you have this guy that was working for a client and everything that was subpar, right? Yeah. The guy that was before you just didn't do a great job.
Terrible job, yeah.
How do you deal with that? Or you're working with somebody on the same job for the same client and you're seeing things that are wrong. Mm-hmm. That's a tricky spot to be in. And I think it's on one side of the spectrum, there's something that's just obviously wrong that you're trying to, you almost feel like you have a sort of moral kind of obligation to say something about it of like, that wall is going to fall down unless I say something about it.
Yes.
Well, if it's to that level, you need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then there's also things that are quite subjective of like, on my job, I would never install the trim with quite that way. Sometimes you just got to stay in your own lane.
Yeah, I don't like that trim color or whatever that paint color looks rubbish.
So I think there's an aspect of being careful with that as well. We're not there to run other people down.
For sure.
No, I mean, and there's an aspect of, well, that customer hired that person to do a specific job a certain way. At the end of the result, if they hired them directly, they're responsible for the outcome of it. Your job, they didn't hire you to critique them unless they did.
Yeah, right.
So I think we have to be careful with this as well when we are detail-minded, see the details, to make sure that we're respectful in this as well, that we carry ourselves appropriately in this with humility, with the right attitude, being a team player even in that situation, and maybe even coming along the other side of the other person instead of running them down and being like, hey, I was just noticing you do that way. Mm-hmm. I had done a few projects we'd done, and seeing the receptivity to some feedback. Yeah. And maybe they just say, hey, stay in your own lane, get out of here. I don't care, and that could be the response, or thank you for telling me.
Yeah. I think, like having a conversation and pointing out all those things, like a job site walkthrough, like I can't really imagine a subcontractor walking through a job site. It's an electrician walking through a job site and just reviewing everything on the job site, right?
Not, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that works well. But I will say, like, if you are a detail-oriented person, I think a great place to start is just by logging it, like writing it down, because then it can just be distributed and there's no like emotion in it. There's no like extra fluff. It's just like, hey, notice these 5 things, on the job site. And then whoever you're supposed to give that to can take it or leave it or ask you a follow-up question on it, but there's no like, oh, they did a crappy job or blah, blah, blah. Like I think logging it and just writing it down can actually like create a vehicle for getting that feedback or getting some of those things highlighted that aren't like critically urgent, like safety concern, I'm not talking about that, but and then can just give the agency and the ownership to the general contractor or to the customer, those kinds of things on the job.
Yeah. Going back to our earlier conversation on just how details matter and why they matter, I think in the sequence of a project where there's setup, there's protection of, furniture, floors, things like that. I mean, if you're doing remodel work, particularly, you're on a project where you don't want to damage other things that are in the home or business. Those kinds of operational details really matter, like to having strong checklists around those things where they don't have to be just observations by somebody on the team as well, of standardize some of that. Because I think that's where some of the overwhelm comes from, where you feel like if I'm not there making sure, there's quite a bit of difference between telling somebody what to do and then making sure that what to do got done when it's clearly defined.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's say, for instance, we had a very clear checklist, handed it off to a team member, said, this is what you're supposed to do. Did you do the checklist? Yeah. As opposed to being
way more black and white.
Yes, right. And if you failed, why did you not do it?
Why did we miss this detail or why do we?
Because at that point, you're delegating the responsibility for accomplishing that checklist to that person, and they should have done it. Yep. At that point, it's just a character issue of like, well, you should have done what you were told.
Yeah.
As opposed to verifying that it was done to the expectations that you had. So I think when we're dealing with the overwhelm, where you feel like if I'm not on the site, if I'm not making things happen, it's not going to get done right. Well, it speaks to some processes not being delineated, where you feel like somebody can own a specific element of that project, where from this point to this point, that checklist is done, and I can feel confident that they did it right.
Yeah.
So I think that's how we can deal with some of that overwhelm. if you're in a position where you just feel like details are getting lost on you, of like, oh no, we missed that, we missed this thing. I think there's an aspect of trying to break down what we're working on into step-by-step process, taking complexity, simplifying it. Yeah. That's how we break it down. Yeah. Of just being like, okay, if we're gonna set the cabinets, well, what needs to be done first? Yeah. Well, let's get the tile in first, and let's, grout the tile so we're not having to grout around cabinet. Whatever the process is of thinking through there's some debate sometimes people have of what comes first. Yeah. Do you set
cabinets
your trim?
On top of floor?
Yeah, that's right. If it's LVT flooring, you don't set cabinets on top of that. Where if it's hardwood flooring, you probably do want it run through. So, there's some debate on some things like that.
Different methodology,
and if you can justify it, and if it's, the correct approach and there aren't any side effects to it, then, you can do that. But nonetheless, you can define those things and make sure that this is the way we do it. It gets done that way, and things are not left to chance. Yeah. One of the things that was challenging for me when doing remodel work is all of these different dependencies that you'd have throughout the whole entire project where, selections along the whole way. And inevitably, one thing like a bathroom fan would hold up putting it in the ductwork, which would hold up the drywall, which would hold up,
the entire project. Else,
like, we're supposed to be installing countertops in 2 weeks, and we're waiting on whatever it is. Yeah. Right. And those are the kinds of things, or something just got drywalled over. Oops, we forgot that.
Bummer. Got old.
Yeah. And then you're patching something. You talk about the 3 to 5x, rework factor. So there's an aspect of really just getting into the groove of being okay with a little discomfort and time centered around, I'm going to make sure all the details get captured. Yeah. So when I see something or a question, what's being done there? That doesn't look right. All those things get captured. I'm going to take notes on these things. And if you're running the job, if your responsibility is the contractor, you are the remodeler, you are the GC, and your result is delivering the final product, well, you better be making notes on those things. Yeah. There's an old saying, when 2 people feed the horse dies. Right. I brought it up before. Yeah. And it's essentially 2 people share responsibility for one thing. Oh, I thought Kinsey had that. Yeah. Ben was going to take care of that. Neither of us did it because both of us were supposed to do it.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about what you're saying is the moment that you go from like a one-man show to like maybe hiring someone else or scaling a team is like the moment that you have to be like ruthless with your like documenting and your processes and your like checklists, because you have to like take what's in your brain and the processes that are in your brain and essentially delegate it of like clear ownership, clear specifications to the person you hired. Like if you actually want to deliver the same amount, like level of quality, right? You have to be able to like make that tangible, and practical for the person that you're bringing onto your team. So that way, again, back to your point of like, hey, they have a checklist. It's broken down this complex thing that maybe you have in your brain and you know exactly how it's supposed to work, but the guy you just brought on to the job doesn't, right? Yeah. Or like they're being developed, right? Yeah. They don't have the same experience that you have. So I think the moment that you scale, the moment you hire someone new, the moment you partner with someone, like details become even more important because you can't just rely on what you know and how you want to do it.
In our episode on efficiency, it really ties into this detail aspect where we're talking about the difference between success and failure on a project is operational efficiency. And a lot of that is in the details. Yeah. There's an aspect, though, of like appreciation, being able to appreciate the details and what goes into making detail happen. Seeing as a kid, my dad's detail-oriented person, and seeing him like making these technical drawings and describing how this would happen and how that would, you just thinking, oh my gosh, can we build something? Why are we spending all this time trying to sort through how something's supposed to be done? Yep. But on the tail end of it, things work smooth as clockwork when you understand how things are, what's being done, how it's being done, et cetera. And I think there's an aspect of even getting to the point as a contractor where you said saying the details do matter. I think that is something to capture. That's a life lesson of just being like, okay, I've got to notice the details. I've got to get good at that. That's where it's at. Yeah. And then it becomes, once you're aware of that, then it's become about how to do it as opposed to, just being blind to them. I mean, how many times people just end up in a situation where like, how did I get here in life, even that way?
It's good.
So I think some of this really centers around like building systems around remembering things and then triggers as well of like when we do this thing, then these are the things that follow. Yeah. So that could be checklists, that could be just different notes that you're taking along the way. I mean, depends on what scope you're handling. Sometimes
Right.
it can feel very manageable. Sometimes this might not feel very practical for some people listening to this because it's like, well, we're going to do this same thing the same way every single time.
Right. Yep.
But to your point, as soon as you try to scale that, sometimes we just get so used to certain details that then you bring somebody else on and they don't do it and you feel like, what an idiot.
Yeah, they're second nature to you, but not to them. Yeah.
Yes. It's just like somebody that's done something 1,000 times, 10,000 times, 20,000 times before. It just feels like, well, I remember watching Roger Federer, one of the best tennis players of all time, explain how to serve. And he was like, well, you just kind of throw the ball up and hit it. It was just kind of like, I was like, Raj.
Like, no, you don't.
Like, there's a lot more going on. It was funny. It was almost comical to me hearing somebody that was that good at playing being kind of just sort of average as
second
a coach.
nature to that. Yeah, right.
Just be like, I just throw, smash, and 150 mile an hour, whatever, 130 mile an hour
But
serve.
same thing, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it feels for us sometimes. It's just second nature, done 1,000 times before you come in, and you almost don't recognize what was involved to getting to the point where you're at now.
Yeah.
So as you scale, of not discounting how much you've leveled up, how much you've learned over the years,
Absolutely.
and how much is required to pass that on.
Yeah, so good. I think as a kind of a key takeaway for me is just like the perfectionism side can really just kill progress on a project. And I'm excited about our next episode because we get into perfectionism a little bit more. So make sure you guys come check that one out. I think it's going to be a good one. But I think also going back to like the reputation side of like, man, if you can start noticing and build your detail muscle, if you will, start noticing those things, your personal reputation is going to increase. Your business reputation, you're going to get more referrals, those kinds of things. So I think that's why, and obviously safety, right? Like what we were talking about earlier of just like it's life or death for your business or personally, if we're talking safety, so noticing those details is something, that can be trained. It's a skill that can be learned. So be around people who see them so that way you can actually level up.
Yeah. If you're in a spot where you're blind to the details, that's where you need to be spending time with people that actually have that experience and can say, hey, this is how it's supposed to be done. So some guidance there. And then if you're in a spot where I need to take better action with the details, where we don't let things slide, dealing with things in the moment. I mean, that's just remember a boss I had as a kid, and he was just, everything got dealt with in the moment. If there was a problem, he got right on the phone and dealt with it right then. Nothing was left. I'll take care of that tomorrow. Wow. Just everything was dealt with right then. I think there's a lot to learn from that. Notes, pictures, getting all this stuff documented, and then not just letting it live in your phone.
Right.
Now it needs to be like, okay, now I need a checklist.
Action
now
steps.
I need to be able to deal with this. And then if something gets down to the point where this is the way we do it every time, start defining it. So now again, detail gets done every time. We've talked about checklists before, no sense beating that one to death, but this is why airline safety is there because there's checklists for everything. This is the maintenance procedure. This is the pre-flight checklist. This is if this happens, this happens. You know what I mean? Everything's defined.
The workflow's defined.
Nothing is kind of left up to, let's just sort of figure this out.
We'll see how that goes.
Exactly. This may or may not work. I love what we're talking about with perfectionism too, because how do you balance all this like detail-minded stuff where you just get lost in the details, you can't move at all. Yeah. So excited to unpack that with you guys next episode. Yeah. We'll catch you guys back next time. Let us know what was helpful in this, what questions you guys have. If there's any topics you want us to cover, we'd love to hear from you. See you later.